What is up, guys? Welcome back to Punk Politics. I'm Mate Thompson. What exactly is going on with the COVID inquiry? If you're unfamiliar with government inquiries, you should absolutely give them a chance. I mean, they're pantomimes, obviously, but what with the soaring cost of energy and actors trying to make money back that they lost through the pandemic, inquiries are a cheaper way to enjoy a pantomime, and yet they can be just as satisfying. You know, like Michael Gove comes out ready to take the stand and you're like, oh, boo, hiss, oh, he's a baddie. Also, you get more bang for your buck. You know, like a pantomime might be like £30 a ticket, and you only get one baddie to boo at. Whereas the COVID inquiry is entirely free to watch, and it is almost 100% emotionally stunted, morally bankrupt sociopaths. Boo! Now, inquiries are often largely pointless. The Hutton inquiry was supposed to establish how or why David Kelly ended up so frazzled by the Blair government, so outed and betrayed by the BBC, that he felt it necessary to take his own life. And the outcome of that report was that the Blair government were almost entirely blameless. There's the Grenfell inquiry, the Leveson inquiry, the Russia reports. It feels like each and every time that the public have a right to know the ins and outs of what's gone on, again and again, the inquiry looks into it and either comes back with like, oh, no, don't worry about it, there's nothing to see here. Or even worse, there is something to see here, but we're going to do absolutely nothing about it. Like they conclude that something bad went on, but the recommendations are largely ignored. So anyway, it is with little surprise that I see the COVID inquiry is beginning to collapse into farce. I mean, first we had the Boris Johnson WhatsApps that the government, now led by Rishi Sunak, really didn't want this inquiry to be able to see. Do you remember that? It was like, I will be the judge of what is too sensitive or irrelevant, thank you. Then Team Sunak refused to hand them over. They said they would rather sue their own inquiry than give them visibility of these WhatsApps. And we were all like, oh, great job, Mr. Transparency and Integrity. And then, do you remember Boris Johnson himself? He said, well, actually, maybe I'll just hand them over directly. And Sunak must have been like, oh, you mother. Anyway, that was Boris Johnson's messages. Now, Rishi Sunak is saying he can't hand his over because, what's that line that they always read out? It's one of the greatest hits. I don't have access to those messages because I've changed phones a couple of times since then. Like, oh my God. Again with this changing phones thing. Like, how many times do we have to say this? Like, if this was some sort of seasoned 80-year-old lord or something, I'd be like, well, okay, maybe you don't. But this is Silicon Valley Sunak here. Like, your messages are backed up in the cloud. And secondly, you're public servants. These phones should be kept safe, 100% transparent. They are instruments of government. They're texts, WhatsApps, emails, whatever. It should all be going into the National Archives. It's just not good enough. You know, in 2023, to be able to get away with it by saying, oh, I lost that phone, or I can't remember my PIN. Also, how dumb do they think we are? That they honestly think that we would believe this stuff? Like, what, you're a highly educated Oxbridge lawyer or whatever? You're capable of running a fast-moving, high-profile government department? You got the ability to coordinate scams and schemes with donors, funneling money to complex shell companies and offshores. Like, these people are super smart when they want to be. But it's funny, isn't it? That intelligence always seems to grind to a halt when it comes to, remembering a PIN or not dropping the phone down the toilet. Like, whoopsie, butterfingers. Like, do any of you remember that article that came out a few years ago where this journalist did the stats and worked out that if you lived in Albert Square in EastEnders, the chances of you being murdered were something like 5,000% more than the average person in the United Kingdom? Because, it's EastEnders, right? Like, every year there's another story about arson or murderers and killings and jealous lovers. And so, yeah, like the journalist did the numbers on it and he analysed it. He was like, yeah, if Albert Square was a real place, then you would be 5,000% more likely to be murdered if you lived there. Like, I think about that article now and then I look at the government, I'm like, I wonder how much more likely you are to lose access to your phone if you happen to be working in Whitehall. I wonder what the stats are like on that. Like, what is it about the psychology of a government official that makes their brain so much more likely to be clumsy enough to just drop phones in the sea? Like, oh dear, there I go again. Like, how many times do these people lose a phone, or it gets stolen, or they forget the pin, or drop it in a river, or it gets compromised by Russian hackers and they're scared to turn it on now? Anyway, the whole inquiry appears to be collapsing into a state of chaos. Sunak is saying, oh, I can't give you the messages because I don't have that phone anymore. But then it turned out over the weekend that that phone is still in existence and it's still connected to the phone number he was using back then. Like, it's still in operation. Also, to pour more kerosene on the dumpster fire, the permanent private secretary from that period, a guy called Simon Case. This was a guy who was constantly going between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, instrumentally involved in the decision-making of number 10 in that chaotic period. So his testimony would have been invaluable. Anyway, Simon Case has been signed off with health problems, so he won't actually be appearing at the inquiry any longer. Oh, that's unlucky. So anyway, yeah, that's the state of play at the moment. Missing WhatsApps, sick note Simon. What do you guys think about all this? Do you think this inquiry is actually going to reach a conclusion and a set of recommendations that will truly show us what happened and put some guardrails in place so similar mischief doesn't cause us problems again in the future? Or are you like me, where you look at an inquiry like this and you're like, well, yeah, here we go again? As always, let me know in the comments below.